It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Hello there, South Mississippi. I'm senior meteorologist Wesley Williams. Thank you for watching Waking Up with Wesley. So today we are finally leaving winter behind and returning to fall. It's going to feel a lot more comfortable if you are waiting to wear your favorite short sleeve shirt, short sleeve top. This will be the day that you might be able to break that back out, as you won't have to stay bundled up as long as you have in the last few days. So let's take you to the weather graphics. First of all, we got to talk about this morning's sunrise. I know last night there was a lot of talk about the northern lights, but we got to look at this sky, which is what I like to call the southeastern lights. Our morning November sky showing that rising sun off toward the south and east of the Mississippi coast, and it's nice and bright. So grab the sunshades, but also grab a sweater, because this morning there is still a little bit of a lingering chill. We actually had some 30s earlier this morning, but now during the 8 o'clock hour, the temperature numbers are up by about 10 to 15 degrees compared to yesterday morning. And when you take a look at the weather pattern, that high pressure is beginning to move off to our east, and the clockwise wind around that high is how we're going to see the warm up come in from the west. So that's where things are warming up over Texas, and that warm air is expected to spread onto our Mississippi coast, really starting today. So that's why it's already not as cold this morning compared to yesterday. And if you have some morning plans, again, you will want to have some long sleeves, or, you know, like I have, a little sweater, something like that. At least it's not as windy as it was a couple of mornings ago. Now, later today, look at this. Oh my gosh, it's 70s. For the first time in like 3 days, we're going to see temperatures in the afternoon rising into the 70s. And we're thinking on the coast, some lower 70s in places like Gulfport, Biloxi, Pascagoula. And thinking inland, some middle 70s, closer to places like Wiggins. So that's a look at the forecast temperatures for Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine, no rain. It's going to be crisp and dry. However, the temperatures are going to be increasing as we go into the next several days. Notice that today we're looking at highs in the low to mid 70s. Tomorrow will be highs in the mid to upper 70s. And eventually some of those upper 70s in inland areas will come pretty close to 80. So it is going to be on the warmer side, but above normal in November is actually just pleasant. It's, you know, not like some scorching hot heat wave. We're all sweating and melting into a puddle of sweat. It's nothing like that. It's just 79 degrees, maybe 80. I do think by the time we get to Sunday or Monday of next week, some of the inland areas might go to 81. But on the coast, because you're actually going to be getting that wind from the Gulf, and the Gulf waters have cooled off quite a bit, that's why your temperature on the coast is not as warm as the temperatures that are a little farther away from the water. So that cold snap has ended. As we return to fall, a milder temperature trend is on the way, and the humidity is expected to stay pretty low for today. We'll actually get to the humidity trend as we plan out the rest of your week into the weekend. But before we do, I do want to quickly rewind to yesterday's almanac, because of course we remember it was a chilly afternoon. We forecasted highs in the 50s, and that's exactly what we had, a high of 54 at 2 in the afternoon, which was way below the normal of 71. But it was the morning low that yesterday morning I was telling you was a record breaker. We hit 27 degrees around 6 in the morning on Veterans Day Tuesday, and that broke the old record of 28 degrees, which was set in the year 1894. So yeah, a record that was over 100 years old fell, and now the records will show that 2025 had the coldest November 11th temperature, and 1894 is coming up in second place. Now, the first freeze of the season, that was the one for places like Gulfport. I know some other parts of South Mississippi have already experienced their first freeze, but where they keep the climate records at in Gulfport that date back to the 1890s, the Gulfport Biloxi area, that we have the years that we can go back and check each year's first freeze of the season. And you'll notice that this year, or this season's first freeze, was November 11th. Last time, we actually didn't get a first freeze until after Christmas. It was in early January. So it was actually earlier this year when we had the first freeze of the 2024-2025 cold season. You'll notice, though, it does fluctuate, right? November, January, December, November, January, December, November. It's interesting. There's almost a pattern there. But when you look at November 11th, compared to all of those other dates, technically November 11th was the earliest one. And I actually went back to look at the rest of the years, and I think I had to go all the way back to 2011 before I found a year with a same or earlier date as November 11th for the first freeze. So yeah, sometimes they can come early, like this year. Sometimes they can come late, like last year. Sometimes you don't get a freeze. You know, we're on the coast here. The Gulf Coast is not guaranteed freezing temperatures every winter season and every fall and winter season. I guess I should say fall, winter, and spring season, because you can get freezing temperatures any time of the year. That is, let's check it out. I want to see if I've got that graphic that shows you the first freeze. So here's how early you can see the first freeze of the season. There's a lot of variation. Sometimes it's November 2nd, like in the year 1899. Some years it's as late as March 6th. That's so late, it's, you know, almost springtime, right? So I guess technically there's actually been no first freezes in the spring season. Now, last freezes, I'm sure there have been some of those, but first freezes, there have been none in spring, which officially calendars spring starts around March 20th, 21st, 22nd, I think. But on average, places like Gulfport, Biloxi, they typically see their first freeze of the season early December. So with us doing it this year in mid-November, it was definitely a little earlier than normal. All right, so now that we did that little quick trip to yesterday's record-setting weather, let's talk about the humidity trend as we plan out the rest of your work week as well as the weekend. So as far as the dew point is concerned, we're looking at dew points in the 40s and 50s today. So it is still going to feel delightfully dry. Tomorrow the dew points might barely hit 60, so you're not really going to notice a ton of humidity, but you may notice that once we get to Thursday, it does not feel quite as crisp as the last few days. That might actually be a help because, y'all, I got shocked by static electricity yesterday. That sometimes happens when the air is really, really dry. You can get these sort of things that tend to happen. You get static shocks more often. Your lips are chapped, you're needing to apply more lip balm. Your skin is dry, you're needing to apply more lotion, and so on and so forth. So when the air gets really dry, that sort of stuff happens. And by the time we get to Thursday and Friday, you won't have to worry about that happening anymore. If there's any more static shocks out there, today would be the last day that would happen. So just a heads up, if you're dragging your feet along the carpet, reaching for the doorknob, and you get that shock, that's why that's been happening, because the air has been just too dry, and those sorts of things happen when the air is really dry. Anyway, Friday we see the humidity, again, the dew point's only around 60, so still not terribly muggy. Now, over the weekend, there's Saturday, there's Sunday, those dew points get close to the middle 60s. So at that point, you will actually notice the mugginess in the air over the weekend. So that's why when you check our 7-day forecast, I just threw the humid word in there so that in case you're noticing that higher humidity on Saturday, that higher humidity on Sunday, that's why we're just getting that wind from the Gulf each day, and a gradual, it's not going to be a sharp change, but a gradual over the course of several days, that change will occur where our humidity starts to gradually increase by the weekend and early next week. Now, if you're just checking the forecast for the first time today, you might be surprised to see that the weekend doesn't have any rain chances. And that's just because when I was looking at the information today, the models have yet again kind of moved the goalposts on our next rain system. When we checked the models on Monday, it showed the rain system arriving around Sunday. When we checked the models yesterday, it showed the next rain system arriving around next Monday or Tuesday. Now we're checking the models again today, and it's showing the next rain system arriving next Wednesday. So each day that arrival of the next rain system gets kind of shoved off farther and farther into the future. And so when you check today's guidance, I can show you the raw model output from the European computer model, which looks at rain chances over the course of a 10-day period. And you'll notice that those rain chances are pretty much non-existent from today, Wednesday, November 12th, all the way through the weekend and even into the first part of next week. Now, once we introduce some humidity this weekend, I'm not going to be surprised if there's like a little stray rain sprinkle here or there. That's not even going to amount to a 10% rain chance to me. So it's not even worth putting on the 7-day forecast. But then we get to around Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week, we might begin to see some of those better rain chances. And again, this is just today's computer models. We'll see what the ones show for tomorrow. But for at this point in time, it does look like if you have some weekend plans, you can plan on dry weather along the Mississippi coast as that rain system, again, just kind of gets shoved a little bit farther out into the future. And when we take a look at the 5-day rain potential, again, I'm not seeing anything on this map. And even when we show you the day by day, it's looking pretty dry here, folks. Not the best news you want to hear in a drought, but it is good news if you don't want rain to bother any of your weekend travel plans, any of your weekend events, festivities. They're looking like they're going to stay on the dry side for now. So that's good news as we get through the middle of the month of November. One last thing I do want to point out to you is, like I said yesterday, no more cold snaps. We get through the middle of the month, there will be no more freezes, there will be no more cold snaps. We're just going to kind of ride the mild trend with temperatures in the 70s and in some inland areas close to 80. Well, that'll pretty much do it for today's edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. See you next time.
Thank you for watching Waking Up with Wesley with WLOX First Alert Weather Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams.